Today I'm going to take a close look at the concept of the slippery slope, because if there is such a thing as a slippery slope, we are now at the bottom of it. As I was leaving last week, after I did the show last week, I met up with my son, Spencer Klavan, no relation, and we were going to have a cigar. We thought we'd drag Knowles out. And we walked by Knowles' office, and Jeremy, the God King, was in there with Knowles, and they waved us in. They said, "You have to look at this." And they showed me this thing. You've probably heard about it. I know Knowles was talking about it earlier. I think this will be a different take, but it's still the same starting point. This was this report on Fox News, a series called America Together, LGBTQ plus Pride Month. And Brian Linus, Fox News correspondent, was talking about a little girl named Ryland, who they translated, they transubstantiated into a boy before he could even speak. That's what he somehow managed to tell his parents, that he wanted to be a boy. And as I was sitting watching this with my son, I perhaps expostulated several words that we don't like to use on the air. I don't remember it clearly, but I think I did. And every time I would do that, either Jeremy or Knowles would turn to me and say, "It gets worse." And by the end, I was saying, how can this be? Here's just a clip of the story.
Before Ryland could even speak, he managed to tell his parents that he is a boy.
I could just see that it wasn't him trying to be a brat. It was like painful. It was truly painful for him to have to wear feminine clothing and for us constantly telling him that you're a girl.
And unlike some trans kids, when Ryland came out at age 5, a few years later, he had the full support of his parents.
Initially, there was some pushback from us in trying to understand this.
We were confused like most people are. We thought that gender and sexuality were the same thing. It took us a while to figure out that those two things are different and that children actually do recognize their gender identity very young. Some of them, not all.
But they listened to Ryland and to Hillary's conservative faith.
For me, it's just a deep spiritual belief that you believe in God and he, created us the way he wanted us. Well, then, yes, he created Ryland just the way he is.
So, as I said, I kept expostulating, exclaiming obscene words, and Jeremy and Michael kept saying, wait, it gets worse. And finally I said to him, how could it possibly get worse? And then they waited till they got to the end, and this was at the end, cut 2.
They listened to families. They met in support groups.
There was a father who was sitting across the table. He says, "You have no idea how lucky you are to be here," which kind of took me back. I didn't at that point consider myself lucky to be there. And he said, our child had displayed this gender dysphoria or this gender misalignment at the same age that Ryland has. And we didn't listen, and we pushed back.
That pushback led that child to turn to self-harm as a teenager, which 60% of trans and non-binary kids engage in, according to the Trevor Project. More than 50% consider suicide.
That, for me, was the turning point. I didn't want to see Ryland go through that.
I'd rather have a living son than a dead daughter.
I want to thank the Whittington family for speaking to us. It's not easy, particularly at a time when transgender issues have been politicized. People are afraid of what they do not understand, Dana. This family hopes their story will lead to more understanding, more acceptance, and ultimately, more love.
So people are afraid of what they don't understand. I just want to tell you how I see this and how I think about this and what I don't understand. There's no science to this. There is no science to this. No gene has been discovered. No chemical imbalance has been discovered. There's no science whatsoever. There's only a theory. There's only an idea. This kid, they say, first expressed this when he couldn't talk. Now, I have raised 2 kids. I've got 2 grandchildren. I know before kids can talk, because a lot of my kids the kids that I associate with could talk when other kids couldn't, and they would express their ideas, but they didn't have anything to say because kids like that are just swimming in a sea of nouns. They say, oh, mommy, daddy, grass, trees. That's what they're saying. So now he's 5, old enough to still believe in Santa Claus, and he believes that he is a boy. Again, no science to this. And not only that, at 5, like I said, you can believe in Santa Claus. When he's 20, he'll be an atheist because his mind still won't be developed enough. You have to get to 25 before your brain is fully developed. So really, his mom and dad took over a power to alter his life and his mind forever in a way that could be tremendously destructive. Those statistics they put forward were very deceptive because they say, well, 50% of trans kids consider suicide, but that remains true even after they have transitioned and had surgery. So that doesn't really mean anything except that they have a real difficulty. And believe me, I have nothing but compassion for people who feel misplaced in their own bodies. But still, to change a child irrevocably before he has reached the age of reason on the things that he is saying, some huge number of kids who think they're the other sex end up being gay. It's over 90%, 95%. It is a huge number of kids who think that they're trans, turn out just to be gay. So these parents impose something on him. Now, after this came out, Knowles and Ben and Walsh all were tweeting about it. Ben wrote a piece about it that I retweeted because I basically read his piece attacking this report, and he said everything that I would have said, so I just retweeted his report. And I want to explain something, and this is important because I know there's a strain of conservatism that says, oh, everyone is trying to fool me, but I'm just too smart. This is the thing where you say, oh, Klavan, he's not convinced that the election was stolen, but I know he's in the pay of people trying to damage, every time I say that I don't believe the last election was stolen, I lose listeners. I'm saying it to you because it's what I believe. I would change my mind if I were convinced that it were untrue. But these guys, they always think they're smarter than everybody, and they look at Ben, they're always saying it about Ben, that Shapiro, he's into this, and he's getting paid by this, and he's just doing this for the money. Fox News is important to us. It is an important ally and an important supporter. They're extremely powerful in the conservative world, or they were until this report came out. But Matt relies on them to make his books bestsellers and his What Is a Woman documentary bestseller. Ben goes on there. Knowles goes on less because they've sort of pushed him out. I don't go on because I'm too much of a loose cannon. They won't invite me on. And we like these people. Greg Gutfeld is a wonderful person. Dana Perino, who is hosting this show, is one of the nicest people I've ever met. Tucker Carlson, we respect him and like him. And so, these are not people we want to offend in any way. So Ben and Walsh and Knowles were being brave. I mean, it's not like rushing into the Taliban stronghold, but it's sticking to your values. Allie Beth Stuckey, who hosts the Blaze Media podcast, Relatable. She's a Christian commentator, really nice lady. She tweeted, "I'm stunned that Fox News ran a segment celebrating a girl whose parents transitioned her into a boy when she was 5 because she apparently told them she was a boy before she could talk. Absolutely maddening." So Twitter locked her out of her account, and people complained. They put them back, but still, they put forward, they've got the message across that if you say this stuff, you're going to be banned. So no science, a child's body ineradicably altered, a mind disturbed, probably not helped. But if you oppose it, Twitter said that Allie violated their rules against hateful conduct. So you're hateful if you oppose it. Now, I think this is evil. I don't even think it's close. It's not even a debate. You alter a child's body so that it can't be altered again on this idea that it has no science behind it. I'm not even saying it's false. I'm saying there's no science behind it. We know that people have transitioned and said they're happier. Some people have said this is inevitable. Very few, but some have. We do know that this exists. These symptoms exist. These feelings exist. And sometimes people are glad that they go through the transition when they're adults. To do this to a child, with what we know now, and then to say it's hateful if you oppose this. It's hateful to not, you only hate it because you're afraid of it. You're afraid of what you don't understand. It's nonsense. That's nonsense. And so what you have is nice people at Fox News, and these are good people, doing stuff that's evil, and that is the way things work, right? This is why I keep hammering on about the culture, because the culture creates our sense of what is good and bad. And when the culture goes bad, and when the culture accepts these ideas without really thinking them through, then the culture has evil in it, and good people start to do evil things. George Washington, one of the best men who ever lived, in both his actions and his mind, held slaves in ways that I think we look at now and we think, yeah, that was evil. He didn't see it. He literally didn't see it because he was surrounded by culture like a fog, and that culture inculcated in him the idea that this was somehow acceptable. Wonderful, lovely women have abortions, something that I think is just inarguably wrong. It's inarguably wrong to kill a baby in the womb. That baby has the same right to life that you have. It has done nothing to anybody. To abort that child is a terrible thing to do. Wonderful women do it because they're like George Washington. They're surrounded by this cloud in which it's acceptable. It's an acceptable thing to do. Perfectly nice people that you would like, people that you would sit and have a drink with, a meal with, befriend, sat and did nothing while the chimneys at Auschwitz spewed out the ash and smoke of the bodies of people being murdered en masse because the story of the culture said it was okay. Maybe it was a little extreme, maybe Hitler was being a little extreme, and now we have this. And I'm sorry, but to do this to children, to think that it's all right to do this to children when we know nothing except these stupid leftist ideas that haven't been parsed, they haven't been judged. I mean, this is going to come back and bite us because people always wake up from these nightmares. They always come around and say, maybe holding slaves, not such a good idea. Maybe having an abortion, not such a good idea. People wake up from these nightmarish dreams. But while we're in it, if we don't attend to our culture, if we don't look at it, you have good people supporting ideas that simply are insupportable. For more Klavan-y goodness, like and subscribe to the Andrew Klavan Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts.